So many times as moms, we get in the weeds on their nutrition and their friends and are they safe and what's the right way to do this and what's the wrong way? How do I discipline? All that. Those are great things. Mm-hmm. Like, don't get me wrong. I think that's all part of a mom's world. But we are missing one of the biggest parts of life is this spiritual warfare. So I just want to grab the moms and I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. I'm sort of shaking you a little bit and being like, let's wake up. It's time to get up. Let's wake up and let's get going here. We got a battle to fight. Like nutrition and safety and all that's great things, but it doesn't even matter if you're not going to pay attention to the spiritual warfare going on in your life, right. In everybody's life. Mm-hmm. Hey everybody, welcome to Wire Talk. Do you ever feel like the battles in life just get to be so much and you are overwhelmed? Well, good news for you. Today on Wire Talk and the next 3 weeks, we are going to dive into Ephesians 6 and talk specifically about the armor of God. God has given us all tools to help us in our daily battles. So I cannot wait for you guys to join us on the next 3 weeks of Wire Talk.
Hello and welcome to Wire Talk. I am your co-host, Emily, and with me I have my wonderful mom, the founder of Birds on the Wire, just in case we have any new listeners got people.
Well, if they are new, welcome.
Yes, welcome to Wire Talk.
Welcome.
We are so excited that you're here. And typically it's like a question-based podcast where moms send in their questions from all around the world where we got a lot of really cool updated feedback of where our podcast has hit.
Over 25 countries
and amazing.
Throughout the United States. I mean, that's insane. We're on every continent other than Antarctica.
I bet the penguins would appreciate it,
That's right. We should just get a little loudspeaker out there and say, hey, Mama Penguins, here we are.
Talk about a tough job. Those Mama Penguins do not have it easy.
That's exactly right.
The March of the Penguins really opened our eyes to their tough life. But this is not about a penguin podcast. This is about moms.
That's right.
But anyways, you guys got some really cool statistics this week that you are in 25 different countries. Mm-hmm. I mean, we were looking at the map before we started today. You're in Guam. You're in the French Polynesian, like these teeny tiny little islands. I love it. You're in Asia. You're in Russia. You're in Africa, Australia.
Europe, South America.
I mean, it's amazing. Is it cool seeing all those little pins?
Well, it was. And then this weekend, we were in the detached garage, which we used to call the nest, is where I used to have my classes for the moms back in the early days. And I pulled out a map and we were starting to, as Birds on a Wire grew, we would put a dot where we had a new group or, a mom wrote in from New Jersey or whatever. Fun. And so we'd put a dot, like there's a mom there and we're ministering to that mom. And honestly, it was just all up and down the East Coast and a little bit in California and a few in Texas. Mm-hmm. And then now we're in all 50 states.
It's amazing.
Canada, South America, Central America. I mean, like you just said, Europe, Asia,
and
Australia.
You're going to these places to speak too.
Yeah, I'm going to Guatemala in October.
I know, I'm so excited.
That's so fun. Yeah, Emily's going with me.
Yes,
it's so fun.
Road trip.
So it's crazy. So if you love Wire Talk, which we hope you do,
yes,
subscribe, which you probably already are, but tell your friends. I mean, that's honestly, Wire Talk is our biggest growth.
Yeah.
And our widest reach.
Which is great because I think moms can just pop it in on their AirPods or over the speakers and listen to it. They can watch us on YouTube. There's really so many different places they can watch it.
Yes.
Real quick, when are you going to Seattle and Washington?
September.
So California and Seattle for Birds.
Yes. Northern Seattle. Like we land in Seattle and then head north.
Yeah.
And then Santa Rosa, California.
Yeah.
But we'll get those in the show notes. Remind me to tell Katie to put those in there. And we'll start posting on social media too. But I would love it if y'all are in that area to come out and see us. I'm so excited. I'm very excited about both places. And I'm just going to stay out there for the whole week because there's no point in flying home and flying back out. No. So I'm very excited.
But don't forget to check the website, birdsonawire.moms.com, for future events. All of her future events are up and uploaded for you guys. So if you are in any of the local areas of any events, sign up, register, and make sure you can come.
Yeah. And what's today?
Today's August 8th.
6th. Yes. So.
Oh, August 6th.
Yeah.
Wait, that's Kelsey's anniversary.
It is.
Happy anniversary, Kelsey.
But I was also thinking I'm going to be speaking at the Well in local Forsyth.
Yes, that's right.
Georgia, where we live. So that's going to be the 17th, August 17th. I've got a main stage and a breakout talk. So how to love like Jesus. So I'm super excited about that.
So hold on. The date is August 6th. That's Kelsey's anniversary.
Yes.
So that's 14 years.
Yes.
So then you and Dad have just celebrated your anniversary.
38 years.
38 years. How amazing. Congratulations. Happy anniversary.
Thank you.
And then you guys will be on y'all's Mediterranean cruise right now.
Well, it's a river cruise. It's not really a Mediterranean. So I'm super excited.
Wherever it is, they're going to be on
I'm
cruise.
probably in Germany right now.
Oh, well,
on the Danube River.
Oh, my goodness. We'll tell all of the little Germans.
Hello. They're one of our podcast listeners.
Perfect.
So, yeah, hello, Germany. Here we are.
Well, Mom, I'm really excited about today and the next 3 weeks. So why don't you give us a little bit of a kind of a bird's eye view, as we'll call it, of what the next 3 weeks are going to look like for us.
Well, we're kicking off this month. And for us in the South, it's back to school month. And anytime it's back to school, I feel like we need to give a charge, State of the Union sort of for moms. Like, get in there. You got this.
It's really the beginning of our year.
That's right. I mean, the world celebrates the new year. In January, we celebrate it as moms at the start of a new school year.
Yes.
So this is a new start of a school year. So I just thought as we begin this new school year, 24-25, let's give the moms something that's really helpful. And in the Bible, in Ephesians, Paul talks about putting on the armor of God. And I just think that's so important because he talks about that we are in a spiritual battle and you need to prepare yourself for the battle so you can fight and endure the battle and be victorious. So this is not about anything scary. This is about living a victorious life. So, and that's what I want always in Birds on a Wire is to equip and encourage moms. And I want to equip you to then encourage you that you've got this. And with God's help, you're going to get through it and it's going to be amazing and wonderful.
I know. I'm really excited about it.
I am too. It's going to be awesome. Really good.
So, all right, well, let's dig in. You ready?
I'm ready. Let's do it.
Hey friends, it's Katie. A quick break from the show to let you know that Karen's newly re-released book, Survival Guide to Motherhood, is now available for pre-order in the Birds on a Wire shop. This all-new edition of the Survival Guide to Motherhood is, in Karen's own words, everything she's been teaching for the past decade summed up in one place. You're going to want to have this book in your personal library, I promise. Whether you're a new mom or a seasoned mom, Survival Guide is full of practical wisdom that will recenter your focus and remind you what truly matters when it comes to raising your child. In the book, Karen covers the personality colors, discipline, marriage, home management, time management, resting in Christ, and even more. If you've been wishing there was a roadmap for motherhood, this is your book. Head to birdsonawiremoms.com/survival-guide, or just click the link in our show notes today to pre-order and have the book shipped to you the day it releases on July 31st. I can't think of a better investment in yourself or of a better gift to give to a friend in this season of life. Again, head to birdsonawiremoms.com/survival-guide, or just click the link in our show notes to get your book pre-ordered today. All right, let's get back to the conversation.
Okay. Yes. Well, before I dive into Ephesians, I want to give everybody some background on Ephesians. So Paul wrote this book of the Bible, and this is when he was imprisoned, and he was on a house arrest. And this is in the years between 60 and 62 AD after Christ's death.
So it's kind of a long, in like our world, it's kind of a long time, like 62 years.
Since after Christ has died. And Paul never knew Christ.
That's
he
right.
was persecuting Christians after Christ had been crucified and has gone. So God met him on the road to Damascus, and then he became a huge disciple for Christ. So he is in Rome. He's in in-house prison. And then this letter is to the church of Ephesus, and it's a reminder to all the churches of Asia to live out their faith in the light of the redemptive power of God. That, Jesus came, he died on the cross for our sins. He redeems us from our sins. He gives us a whole new life. And so Paul's like, hey, guys, live it out. Shout it up from the rooftops. Let everybody know. And this book has been influenced Christian leaders and Christians all over the world ever since he wrote it. So it's a letter of encouragement, and it's got so much practical wisdom in it that we can apply in our lives right now. So,
Yeah.
All right. With that all being said, let's dive into Ephesians.
Let's do it.
So it's Ephesians 6, 10 through 18.
And I'm going to be actually following along in my Bible because it just,
It's
for
just
me,
better
it's,
for you.
honestly, it's just less distracting.
Perfect.
So,
This is the NIV translation, just so if anybody else is reading along, that's what we're reading. So he says, verse 10, finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the armor of God, so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything to stand firm then, with the belt of truth buckled around your waist, with the breastplate of righteousness in place, and with your feet fitted with the readiness that comes from the gospel of peace. In addition to all of this, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming arrows of the evil one. Take the helmet of salvation and the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God. And pray in the Spirit on all occasions with all kinds of prayers and requests. With this in mind, be alert and always keep on praying for all the Lord's people. So, this is a long one, but today we're just going to focus on verses 10 through 13. So let me just read all that once more time. Finally, be strong in the Lord and in his mighty power. Put on the full armor of God so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. For our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. Therefore, put on the armor of God so that when the day of evil comes, you may be able to stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand.
That's powerful.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, you have to think, I'm trying to put myself in Paul's shoes. Okay, he's on house arrest.
Mm-hmm.
He's not had an easy go of it. I mean, he's been persecuted.
He's had a hard life.
He's had a hard life. So why do you think he chose that metaphor of using the armor and what's happening historically that made this super relevant to the church of Ephesus?
Well, the people of this day and age were very familiar with soldiers, specifically Roman soldiers. You know, this was the time where, you know, Caesar and all the Caesars thereafter, they ruled the world, and they would come into these foreign lands, they would have war, they would have battle, they would win, and then they would take over, and then they would rule, they would leave like legion or whatever in these cities to rule these occupied territories. So the Jews and the Gentiles woke up every single day to Roman soldiers in their land. And so they were very familiar with it. So Paul is telling us we are soldiers in the Christian world, and our enemy is the devil. And he has a plan, and he has a scheme, so we need to be prepared.
He was I felt like he was very specific with that word scheme.
I agree.
Because I think sometimes we're like, oh, he's got a plan, but it's not a plan, it's a scheme.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So I think that's crazy. Like he's like, you've got a battle of your own, and I'm going to help you fight it.
And I'm so glad that Paul brings this to our awareness. Like, I don't think the majority of us wake up every morning and think, oh, I need to put on the armor of God.
Right.
Yeah, I need to put on armor. We don't think about soldiers.
Yeah.
I don't see soldiers on a daily basis.
I don't either.
I mean, I did whenever we lived in Virginia because it was a military town. I mean, I saw uniforms.
Right.
But nobody was armed. You know, I might see a policeman with a gun in his holster or whatever, but I don't see that on the regular basis.
Yeah, and I think some people, and me, myself included, we don't understand that there is spiritual warfare going on every day. Like even being honest with you, everyone who's listening. We had a little bit of it this morning. I had to call my husband. I was like, Brian, this isn't working. I've got this weird noise in my headphones. It's not picking up. And before we started recording, I felt my mom just was like, you know what? Let's pray. And you said before you prayed, you're like, this is spiritual warfare because 100%. What we're saying is truth. And the devil doesn't want it.
He doesn't want this message to get out to all of the moms. He's like, no, let's don't. And I learned this at North Point years ago whenever I worked at church. And North Point was growing in early 2000s. We were growing like gangbusters every Sunday. And I was on the children's staff. And the craziest things would happen on Sunday mornings that just didn't make sense. I remember one Sunday we had made like 1,000 coloring sheets for these kids coming in for 1 hour.
Okay.
I mean, that's how many kids were in this thing. And nobody could find the coloring sheets. Like we had printed them all the week before. And everybody was just scrambling. We were looking underneath things, in drawers and cabinets. We could not find them. And it just occurred to me, like, this is spiritual warfare. And I said to the team, we need to start praying before every Sunday morning because we're doing God's work here and we need to pray against the enemy and his schemes.
Mm-hmm. So going back to that word schemes, in verse 11, it says that we need to put on the armor so that you can take your stand against the devil's schemes. We don't really talk about the devil much, but what does that phrase mean? What are the devil's schemes? Like if you could put into words, what are they?
Well, if you go all the way back to Genesis and we are all first introduced to the devil. He comes in the snake in snake form to Adam and Eve. And he's tempting her with the apple, like, hey, eat this. And it says he is the craftiest of all the animals. And I just think that word crafty, we just have to think about that. Like he's sneaky. When you think of a child being sneaky or whatever, or any of us have been sneaky in our life, he's like the most sneaky of all. Paul goes on Peter tells us in 1 Peter 5:8, I love this verse. Be alert and of sober mind. Your enemy, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion looking for someone to devour.
He is looking.
Yeah, he's searching us out. And here's the deal. I love that picture of a lion. And a lion is sneaky whenever they're coming up on their prey. They get down low. They hide behind things and then they pounce. And that's what he's saying. This is what the Satan is doing. Jesus tells us that we have an enemy and that our enemy is Satan and that he is the father of all lies. Jesus tells us in John 8:44 that he speaks his native tongue and that is of lies. He knows no truth. So it's just interesting. And then I think the devil looks for our weaknesses and they're all different in all of us, but he knows and then he pounces on those. I think a lot of times in today's culture, he's using social media to work against moms because a lot of times when moms are looking at social media, they come away feeling less than. They come away feeling like I'm not good enough, all these things. And that's not good. That's not good.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of things and he fills our minds with lies. We'll get into that in a few weeks. But I just think, I love that.
So, all right, well, let's go on to the next verse. Verse 12 says that our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of the dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms. My southern coming out. The realms. Can you unpack that? And why do moms need to know this for us and for our children?
I think it's important because so many times if I get upset or frustrated or angry, I put all my anger on that person. Like if it's your dad or if it's one of you kids growing up or if it's somebody that cuts me off in traffic or whatever it is.
Right.
Whatever makes me upset. I focus all my attention on they're just an evil person. They're this, they're that. But in reality, my struggle, as Paul says here, is not against flesh and blood. It's not against another person. My struggle is a spiritual battle. And so I need to start looking at things in that light. When your dad and I will get sideways with each other, just like yesterday, Your dad is a blue melancholy. Melancholies are notorious for being moody. He woke up. I didn't do anything. He didn't necessarily do anything. He was just in a little funky mood. And I just realized, like, I'm not going to get into this. Like, we've been married 38 years. This is the way he is. I need to let him be. Now, the old Karen would have been like, what's wrong? What's wrong? What's wrong? Half the day, which would have made him more irritated throughout the day. And I just let him be because I thought this is not a battle between Greg and I, flesh and blood. This is a spiritual battle. And I just need to give him space and let him be. We went to church. We went to the lake. And by mid-afternoon, he sort of worked himself out of the funk. And I did pray for him throughout the day. That's good. You saw different things were happening throughout the day. You know, he was just making mistakes, which he doesn't normally do.
He doesn't normally do, no.
And it was frustrating him. And every time I was just like praying for him, like, you know, God, he's having a hard day. Just lift him up. In my mind, I didn't like stop everybody and like, let's pray for Greg right now. But in my mind, I'm just praying for him and praying for myself. Like, help me to respond to him in a sweet, loving, God-like manner kind of thing. Same thing whenever y'all were young and when y'all would get on my nerves. I mean, if I'm going to be honest, I would just say, God, my battle is not against these children, this flesh and blood. This is a spiritual battle. Of course, Satan wants me to get weary. He wants me to grow tired. He wants me to give up. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to give me the strength that I need to get through this day.
Yeah.
You know, and those are just some examples, but
I think those are very helpful.
I know that too, one more. Whenever my dad was sick and he was dying with cancer, there's 4 girls in our family, and you know, stresses were high, tensions were high. We were all emotional. We were all handling it different ways, and we would snap at each other, or the doctor would say something and we would, you know, we all would react differently. Maybe some of us didn't like the way one of us was reacting, whatever. We were getting in, you know, fights and things like that. And I reminded my sisters, like, this is a spiritual battle, and we're not against each other. And once we all sort of shifted our mindset and started looking at it from that way and waking up and starting to pray for each other, praying for my dad as he was ending his days on this earth, things got so much better because we started handling it from a spiritual standpoint rather than a human standpoint.
You even do that in our family, you know, just if there's something coming up and you kind of see that it's just like honestly, like a perfect storm of everything that could possibly not go right, or
holidays are usually,
or, you know, or just anything. You know, we're all married. We all have spouses. We all, 3 of us have 3 of your kids have children now. Abby doesn't, but they have a dog. And, you know, when we all have a lot of opinions in our family, like we are not a family that just, whatever. Like, you know, we're like, we're loud and like, we're very opinionated. Even me as a green, I'm an opinionated person because that's just how we were raised. And mom's like, you got to speak up. And I'm like, okay, let's do it. And, you know, if we get sideways, you're like, guys, like, let's take a step back, take all the emotion out of it. And then you kind of point us all, be like, guys, this is spiritual warfare.
Yeah.
Are you, and you'll check us and you'll check yourself too. Like, are you praying for your siblings? Are you praying for are you praying for your sibling spouses? Because if you're not, then the devil will take this family down. Yeah. Because he sees 100%. It as a strong unit. And that really woke me up just a couple weeks ago. I'm like, you know what? I am not. Like, I mean, I want to say I am, but like, I'm not. Like, I am whatever. I hope everyone's having a good day. Thank you for this day. But am I deeply praying for my family? No. Like, I was like, I need to really do that.
Most of us just don't see spiritual warfare for the way it really is.
I think you kind of opened my eyes to that. You know, I thought it was more of I think growing up, I thought it was just like an Emily battle. Yeah. Like, you know, and that's happened with me, you know, with different things. But I don't think I realized that he can take units of things and split them apart. Because it's anything. I mean, God says where 2 or more are gathered, we will glorify him. And say, it's like, I don't want that. Right. I don't want any of that. You know what I mean? So I'm going to break it apart. And he is, you know, there's a saying, there's snakes in the grass. You know, and it's Satan can be a snake in the grass. Yeah. Snakes in the grass.
So that's what Paul is telling us, to be prepared, stand firm. I love that part. I'm just going to skip on down to that, the standing part. In verse 11, he says, stand. He says it again in 13. And when we're standing, we're ready.
Yeah.
Think about that. Like, you don't go to battle sitting down.
I know this is a silly analogy, but it's like when you're playing tennis.
Yeah.
Because you've used that, like, when you're playing tennis, you always tell me, like, you can't just be, you got to be ready.
Yeah, you got to sort of crouch down and get ready.
Yeah.
Because you don't know which way the ball's going to go.
Yeah.
Whenever God was preparing the Israelites to leave Egypt way back, in Exodus, and they did the Passover, he told them how to prepare for the Passover meal, what to even wear to that dinner. And in Exodus 12:11, he was telling them, he says, this is how you are to eat it. With your cloak tucked into your belt, your sandals are on your feet, and your staff is in your hand. Eat it in haste. It's the Lord's Passover. They were to eat it and be ready to go. They needed to be prepared. So that's what Paul is telling us. Hey, wake up. You're in a battle. You got to stand. You got to be ready to go. You don't know which way the devil's going to be coming at you, so you got to be ready.
Yeah. God is telling the Israelites how to prepare for the Passover. So that's
to be
great.
ready.
Paul is telling us to put on the armor of God.
Right.
But how can we prepare ourselves to spiritually and stand firm against these challenges?
Great question. First off, we have to wake up. And we have to realize that we have an enemy. In the Christian world today, we don't talk about the enemy that much. We talk about loving like God and all those things. And all those things are wonderful and great.
Right.
But God tells us you have an enemy. Jesus tells us you have an enemy. Get ready. Paul devotes a lot of time to telling us how to combat the enemy. We need to pay attention. We need to wake up. We need to start reading his word so we know what to do. Second thing, we need to pray and ask God to help you see things as spiritual warfare. That we have to retrain ourselves. Instead of being like, oh, I'm so mad at my mother-in-law, or that, my neighbor's just getting on my nerves, or I can't stand this person, or they're being mean to my child, or whatever. We need to stop looking at it as it's a battle against flesh and blood, and start looking at it as it's a battle against in the spiritual realm. Okay, and lastly, we need to thank God that He has power over Satan, and that Jesus won on the cross whenever He was resurrected after 3 days of dying. So there's power there. We need to plug into that power, not get fearful, sit in the corner like, oh no, we have an enemy. Oh no, he's prowling around like a roaring lion. We're going to get devoured. No, we have to stand. We have to be ready. We have to know, like, God has given us this power, and Paul is teaching us this is how you use the power. So for the next 2 weeks, we're going to dive into the power.
Oh, man.
I'm excited.
I'm excited too. And I think when we were talking about what we were talking about, what we were going to talk about in August, we were like, what do we do back to school? I'm like, yeah, but everyone tells us about like getting ready for school, but like, how do we get these kids ready for school? You know?
Yeah.
And then
how do we get ourselves ready?
Yeah. And then we were talking about praying, and I'm like, I love that. So we're ending, it's going to be a good month. I was like, and I feel like the moms want it. Like, we're ending it with prayer, but we're talking for 3 weeks about how to strap on the power of the armor of God, and how to prepare yourself and your children. And this is just the top of it. So I'm excited to.
Well, and I think so many times as moms, we get in the weeds on their nutrition and their friends, and are they safe, and what's the right way to do this, and what's the wrong way, how do I discipline, all that. And those are great things. Like, don't get me wrong, I think that's all part of a mom's world, but we are missing one of the biggest parts of life is this spiritual warfare. So I just want to grab the moms and I'm not stepping on anybody's toes. I'm sort of shaking you a little bit and being like, let's wake up. It's time to get up, let's wake up and let's get going here. We got a battle to fight, like nutrition and safety and all that's great things, but it doesn't even matter if you're not going to pay attention to the spiritual warfare going on in your life, in everybody's life. Yeah.
Well, this was a great discussion.
Thanks.
I can't wait to dive into the next 2 weeks of the full armor of God.
Yep.
And thank you for doing the homework of figuring out the best ways to practically put it in our lives, because that's hard.
Thank you. It was hard. I have to say, it was a lot of early mornings, but we got it done.
Oh, we were talking about, you're like, oh, I got a lot of work to do. But Mom, you got ready. You stood up. You said, I can't. You're like, I'm not going to do this. So
I couldn't just phone this one in.
You couldn't. You said that the other day. I'm like, what does phone them in? You're like, what? But anyways, it's a different discussion. Well, anyone who is listening, thank you so much for reaching out and finding Wire Talk, whether you are a first-time listener or have been here for a really long time, wherever you are in the world, we are so glad that you found us. And don't forget, you can look at upcoming events on birdsonwiremoms.com. Also, if you've already pre-ordered, you should have your copy of Survival Guide to Motherhood because it has been officially released on July 30th. So that's exciting. And we're excited to go through the full armor of God and how to prepare you and your children for the upcoming season, no matter what season you are in. And we will see you next week. See ya.